Hi.
Hi.
Back
Hello
again.
back to Trip Chat. Today we've got Josh Quigley with us. Now look, a super fit cyclist, and you'll see it by his tricot. He's just been back from the road, and he's been cycle every day, don't you, Josh?
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh yeah. How many miles did you do today?
So today was just a really short cycle. I was doing about an hour and a half. It's a little bit different at the moment compared to what I used to do because I'm now beginning to start doing like road racing, which is a totally different type of training. So a lot of the stuff I've done before, like as I'm sure we'll get in the chat, was like cycling around the world. So that was sometimes like 100 to 200 miles per day. But a lot of the stuff I'm doing now is a lot more shorter and intense intervals. So the miles aren't that much, but it's a
Okay.
lot more intense.
Yes, so Josh, you and I go way back almost, don't we? When you used to be in the social media world, and I used to be a little bit in the social media world. That's when we knew each other. And then, I probably let you talk for yourself because no one can describe us as much as you can. I kind of introduced you as the cat with nine lives because, well, I've witnessed two of your lives going almost, and it was always very scary. So tell us what happened first time around and how you got to your journey where you're in now.
Yeah, so this is quite nice to do a chat with you, Beryl, because I do a lot of these kind of podcasts and interviews and things like that. And most of the people who I'm speaking to only really know me as Josh the cyclist or Josh the athlete and everything that I've done in the last couple of years. But you're one of the few people who probably remembers my old life,
Yes?
which was, and to go a little bit into that. So basically, in 2015, I was essentially an entrepreneur. I guess I still am. I don't think it ever leaves you. But I was running a business in Edinburgh, a social media marketing agency. We had a couple of staff, we had our own office, and from the outside looking in, it probably looked like I was, a successful or a picture of success, and I had everything that I wanted. But behind the scenes, I actually wasn't doing that well. I was for the first 6 months of the business, which I started in 2014. I was just on this incredible roller coaster journey of starting my first real business. Like I was 21 years old, I was living in Edinburgh, had the office, we're going to all the entrepreneurial
Yeah,
events. It was just such a fun, exciting
it
time.
was.
You imagine being that young and having your own business, and it was just so much fun. But at the end of that year, around about December time, my long-term girlfriend and I broke up, and that was just the most devastating thing that I've ever been through in my life. And it's important to say as well that it's not, I don't say that as like a victim or for people to feel sorry for me. Like I definitely wasn't a perfect boyfriend. I was quite a selfish guy. I was like a lot of young guys in Scotland. I was more interested in, going to the pub and going out with my mates. And, that was the sort of life that I was living, especially with being on the entrepreneurial scene and all the events and things that I was going to. But I found that really difficult, and that kind of entered me into a really dark depression, which lasted for about 6 months. And so the first 6 months of 2015, I was really non-existent in the business. I was very rarely at the office. I was just in a really dark hole, and I was drinking a lot, and I was at the pub all the time, and just things were really bad. And in the May of that year, about 6 months after that, I decided to take my own life and crash my car really fast on the motorway at about 70 miles an hour, and was really lucky to survive. And it's actually really weird for us to be doing that today of all days, because this is actually
Day.
this is the 5 year anniversary of that car crash. So
Oh,
this is so
yeah.
26th of May is such a big day for me, and it's always been such a significant day for me in the last few years. And so we're now 5 years into that, and it's just incredible to think where I am now compared to 5 years ago. And I suppose we'll get into a little bit of how I went for that to where I am now. But so that's basically what happened, and that was a real turning point for me, because I remember after surviving that, being in the hospital. And at this time, as I spoke a little bit about earlier, I was drinking a lot. I was just not out at the pub, stuff like that. I wasn't the sort of guy who was like spiritual, anything like that. But when I was in the hospital that night, I don't know why I'd done this still to this day, but I basically wrote a message in the guest book in the hospital chapel, essentially thanking a God that I didn't believe in, and said, I'm going to, turn my life around and, give my life to God, whatever that was going to look like. I didn't have a clue. And so that was life changing for me. And I think leaving that hospital, which was literally 5 years ago on this very day, 26th of May, it was almost like the best way to describe it. It was just like a complete spiritual awakening, in the sense of all the things that I used to care about and used to be passionate about just disappeared. And the best way to describe it is that, I survived that crash that night, but a part of me definitely died that night when I hit that wall. Like, a part of me died. And I guess it was the person who I thought I was. And almost overnight, I just lost all interest for the life that I was living. I lost interest for the business I was running. I didn't have any interest in, the lifestyle, going to the pub, and I was still doing that because it was such an escape for me, given how I was still feeling. But I just knew that isn't what I wanted to do anymore. And about 3 or 4 months after that, I decided, right, I'm going to do something different, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And I eventually ended up with this crazy, crazy idea called the Tartan Explorer. And I was at an event in Edinburgh, and Chris Hoy was speaking, and it wasn't like it was a cycling event or a sports event. It was actually I think it was organised by Scottish Edge, so it was essentially a business event, and Chris Hoy was there speaking, talking about the mindset of a champion. And it was really aimed at like a business and entrepreneurial audience. So I wasn't there because I was interested in cycling.
No.
I was there as an entrepreneur, and I was still in that scene.
Yeah.
I wasn't really sure what I was doing. I was just there anyway. And I remember just being in the audience that day and just being so inspired by Chris Hoy. And even though I was like quite overweight, I was unfit, I was drinking all the time, and quite importantly, I was not a cyclist. I decided I'm going to cycle around the world. That was literally it, and that was another turning point for me. And I went away. I thought about it. I came up with the name, the Tartan Explorer. I put it on Facebook, and I guess the rest is history, really. Because after that, the video went viral, and I was on BBC News and ITV News. It just went crazy. And then about 5 or 6 months after that, in the following year, I set off to cycle around the world on my first
But did you not
attempt.
start with Scotland first? Did you not go
Yeah.
on the roads to Land's End? Or did
Yeah, so what was interesting about that as well is that, that was, so I set off for the cycle on the 26th of May 2016. So
Yes.
that was at the time, that was the 1 year anniversary of the suicide attempt. And so it's 4 years ago today that I set off to cycle around the world. But before that, I thought, if I'm going to try and cycle around the world, I should probably do like a warm up. And it's crazy to think about this now, given how advanced and how technical my cycling is, and how thought out and strategic it is. Because I literally was on the bike twice. I done like one 20-mile cycle to Airdrie, and then I done one 15-mile cycle to South Queensferry. And I thought, right, I know how to ride a bike. I can still do it. And then I set off from Livingston on the warm up, which was a 1,100-mile cycle right around the entire coastline of Scotland, like all the way down to the borders, all the way up the west coast, John O'Groats, Aberdeen, Dundee, and back to Edinburgh. And so I cycled around Scotland 28 days, and that was by far the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And I can remember on the day I set off, I think it was around about the beginning of April and of 2016, and there was like a big send off for me down at Livingston Stadium. There was media there was local MPs, there was loads of people who had followed me, and who had friends and family. There were just so many people there to see me off. And I remember pedaling away from the stadium, and when I'd went out in those two cycles to prepare, my bike was obviously really light. But then the bike I had for going around Scotland, it had like 2 bags in the front, 2 bags in the back, a big camping bag, loads of food, clothes, chargers. The bike was about 50 kilograms. And I remember pedaling up the hill away from the stadium at like 5 miles an hour. And I was just like doing this kind of like forced smile and waving at everybody. And as soon as I got around the corner, I was like, shit. Like, what the hell have I signed myself up for? This is just absolutely brutal. And for the first probably 5 to 7 days, as I went from Livingston over to like North Berwick, down to Berwick upon Tweed, down through the borders towards like Gretna Green and over to the west
Yeah.
coast. For the first 7 days, it was just the worst thing in my life. And I was doing about 50 miles a day, which felt like 500. I was just so unfit. My back was sore, my legs were sore, my bum was sore. Like, everything was just so sore.
Someone steal your tent as well or something?
Yeah, I lost my tent. That was what happened. Yeah. And I remember just thinking for that first week, like, I've signed up to this challenge to go around the world. This is just a warm up. Like, it's going to take 2 or 3 years at least to do it. It was so many miles. I was like, I've told all my friends and family, I've left my business, got rid of the business, got rid of the staff. You know, I have been on all the national TV
Oh
and the
yeah.
media, all my business. Everybody in the world who knows me knows that I'm cycling around the world.
So you
And
had to do it.
and here I was, like a weekend, just hating it, just absolutely hating it, and thinking it was the worst thing ever. But I thought I need to keep going. There's no alternative here, and so I just kept going. And at the time I got up to like Glasgow, and then I was going up through the west coast, I started to get a little bit fitter, started to go a little bit faster. And by the time I got to the Highlands, I was up in Inverness, and I went right round the North Coast 500.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was starting to feel a little bit fitter, and I think just the experience of being somebody who's so passionate about Scotland and who's just so Scottish, like everything about me is so like fundamentally Scottish. I just love this country, but like a lot of people, I'd never actually seen most of it.
Yeah.
Like I'd never been at that time. I'd never been further north than like Dundee or something like that. And there I was on a bike going round like Tongue and at the islands and John O'Groats, and it was such a beautiful, almost like a spiritual
Mm.
experience in a way to be in that part of the world that was just felt so aligned with who I was. And it was so amazing. And you know, I managed to finish that cycle in about 28 days. I think I've probably actually seen you. That did you come to the?
Oh yeah.
You
I
were
was
at the
there,
party,
yeah.
weren't you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And we had the radio show beforehand. Where
Yeah,
we
because
were
I can always remember being in the Santander who'd been helped and they'd sponsored it, and they put on an event in their really nice office on St Andrew's Square. And I always remember seeing you, and do you remember I was showing you my calves, and
yeah.
I was saying, feel the steel. I always remember that. I always remember that, and it was just so that was absolutely incredible. And then I also got home, and it was about a month between that one ending and going to cycle around the world. And I remember just for that month, I just was like in such a depression again because it'd been such an amazing month. You know,
I,
I'd went from being so depressed and hating life to you know cycling around the Highlands on the adventure of a lifetime. And then I came back and I just you know I remember going up to the pub because I thought what else am I going to do? And it just wasn't the same. It was like I was in the same pub that my local pub that I'd been in all those years growing up and just absolutely loved. And I remember just sitting with like a pint of beer like that, and I was just looking about, and I was like, this is done. Like I'm finished with this life. Like I don't want to do this anymore."
yeah.
And so then eventually I got on the bike on the 26th of May, and I set off to cycle around the world, and that was the first attempt at that.
Yeah, so yeah, you like I said, I remember you contacted me because obviously, like you said, I knew you from the social media world, and you were always this, high flying, be like you were everywhere. And then suddenly, I hadn't heard from you in a long while, and I hadn't known what had happened. And then you contacted me, and we were in the radio show, and you were like doing the Tartan Explorer, and that I really loved to hear, and I could see how it was so heartfelt, and that you were so in for mental health as well. So because that was the thing you were on about, wasn't it? That people don't usually open up about when they don't feel right, and that it's so important to talk about it. And that yes, you came up with this amazing adventure, but other people probably don't. But still, they have issues. And I do remember that at the beginning, what kept you going was that so many people read about your story and got inspired and actually ended up not taking their own lives, which was that was the big thing for me as well, to kind of see how you managed to inspire. You always inspire, but you did life-saving work at the time, and probably still do.
Yeah, so back in the beginning when I came up with the idea, like the original idea was it was like I'm going to cycle around the world to raise awareness in mental health
Yeah.
and try and inspire people. That was the idea, and that was everything I was talking about back then. But I think now, like we've got the benefit of like 5 years of
Yeah.
hindsight and looking back. I think if I look back now, like obviously I was so like at that time like out and about doing all the mental health stuff, but I guess if I look at it now, like I looked like I was doing it for everybody else, and I was trying to raise awareness of this cause, but I was just doing it for myself. And that's I think that's okay to admit that
Oh
because
yeah.
I needed it. Like I was in a really dark place, and I found that by doing something to help other people, I was actually helping myself.
Yeah.
And that was the thing that I think in the end sort of healed me essentially, because I needed something to focus on for a period of time. And it was, I guess the most beautiful thing about it was that I was on this journey where I was helping other people, but as people watched that from the outside, you could really see that what I was doing, I was just helping myself.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing,
No,
because
that's
I was helping myself and other people, but I needed to go on that journey, like I really did. And that year that I went away and done that, it really did save my life, and it really helped me. And basically what happened was, like, I went away to cycle around the world, and I was about a year into the challenge, and I'd cycled about 10,000 miles. I was in my 14th country, and I remember just feeling like so amazing. Like, I was so happy and so healthy, and I was so fit. And I basically spent a year where I was, cycling around Europe. I think I read like close to 100 books, like just so much like philosophy and personal development, just so many different things. I was couch surfing and meeting all these different families and people. I was staying in hostels. I seen the fjords in Norway and the French Riviera, and oh, just so much. And you can imagine being like really depressed and like really suicidal actually, and having that, being in Scotland, hating where you are, hating your life, hating how you feel, and then going to that, like, it was just the adventure of a lifetime. And it really did sort me out that year. And I remember after about a year in, I was cycling through the south of France. I remember just having like almost like a sort of Forrest Gump moment, which was like, I think I'm going to go home now. Like,
Yeah.
like I don't need to do this anymore. Like, I don't need to cycle around the world. I think I'm better, and I felt great. And so that's what I done. I decided to go home after that year. And I think at that time I thought that I could just walk away from cycling completely. I thought I made a mistake back then, that I could
Yeah.
just come home, give up the bike, and live my life, and that would be it. But as I soon found out, once I came home from that cycle, I think this was round about spring in 2017. After that, I was like, I had ended up having a period of about 18 months where I was going back on the bike and coming home, and going back on the bike and coming home. And I'm sure for
Yeah.
people to watch, and I'm sure you were there, it was just so all over the place, and I was just lost.
Yeah.
I was just lost. I'd spent that year where I had the purpose of waking up and riding the bike, and the challenge that I was on, and then to come home,
And
I
suddenly,
found it so easy to slip back into my old habits and my old life. And yeah, I just kept getting back on the bike all the time. And then that led me up to April of 2019, this time last year, roughly, when I decided after 14 months of being off the bike that I was going to go for it one more time.
yeah.
And that was the thing that changed my life. There's so many moments in the journey, like the suicide attempt and the breakup and getting on the bike the first time. But April the 14th last year, I decided that I was going to cycle around the world again, and I was going to do something different this time, and that I wasn't going to stop until I finished.
Yeah.
And that changed my life. It really did.
Yeah, like just to kind of say, they always say, like in the airplanes, put your own oxygen mask on first before you help others. So yes, it's absolutely right to help yourself first, but you always, even if you didn't mean to, helped others by doing what you did. So that's what I find amazing about you. So okay, so tell us about the last attempt, because that ended up being quite the journey, didn't it? So
Yeah.
what was the journey supposed to be like? Let's.
Can I actually just? I'm just going to open the door. It's just so hot in this conservatory. Give me a
Yeah, sure,
second.
sure. So we've got a couple of pictures of where he went, and like I was obviously always following it, like but with millions of others, and he was sponsored a little bit to be helped, and like we had a couple of places where he was going to be, but it was just fun to read. Josh, he did his, well, probably not daily, but like weekly video vlogs telling us what happened, and you were like, oh my god, I can't believe this is how it happened. And now there were so many obstacles. So yeah, we have one picture of Josh here where he's on the bike on this long road. Where's that now? Yeah, like you in a panorama. You can't see it. We've put up a picture of you on your bike.
Okay.
Like, really, there's like a big long road just disappearing off behind you in the background. It's
Probably Kazakhstan, I think that photo is, if I'm thinking of the right one.
Yeah, there's like a metal armco going down the side of you, and there's just the road disappears off to a bit of a
Looks
hill
pretty
behind
much
you.
like
So
it, because you did go east first, didn't you?
Yeah, so what happened was, I'd been off the bike for about 14 months, and in that period, before that, sorry, I'd had loads of attempts at getting back in the bike, and then I had a period of 14 months where I didn't cycle a single mile, and I was doing loads of different things, and I was away and I was back, and I was away and I was back. And then basically at the end of 2018, my dad passed away, and he'd got cancer in the summer, and then he'd been in hospital for 4 or 5 months, and then passed away at the beginning of December. And at that time I was actually I was actually doing quite well. Like I'd managed to kind of find my feet a little bit, doing a lot of motivational speaking, and I was, telling the story of, what had happened in the past and the cycle that I did go on. And then I remember after my dad passed away, I just fell into a bit of depression again. It was just quite difficult. And I remember January of 2019, I was just thinking, right, what am I going to do now? Like I was just feeling a bit depressed. And usually what happens anytime something goes wrong in my life, I just get back in the bike naturally. So I thought, you know what, I'm gonna get back in the bike and I'm gonna cycle around the world. So I went away for a couple of weeks and then I came home and then I had another attempt and I came home. And I basically got to a point in April 2019 last year where I had 6 attempts around the world, and I thought, there's something within you, right, that wants to do this clearly, but there's always something within you that stops you and brings you home. And I always interpreted that as, there's part of me, like my highest self, my truest self, like the person I really am, wants to do this, but there's fear there about something that's stopping you. And I just kept stopping, and I thought, I need to just go for it and do it. And I thought, what I'm going to do this time is right, because really so interesting as well is I had a sponsor who were working with me, a company called Alexinal, who are still sponsoring me now to this day. They wanted to support the challenge, and then I pulled out and I let them down, and it was a big mess.
Yeah.
But they still wanted to support it. And so I had a situation April last year where I had 2 options, which was I either get a job, which is doing some sort of, I don't know what it would have been. Like I've spent my entire life fighting getting a real job, right?
Yeah.
So entrepreneurial, but there were just no options left. And I thought, I either get some sort of job that I clearly hate and I'm not passionate about, or I do the thing I've tried to do 6 times that a company wants to support me to do. It was like there was no choice. I had to do it. Like there's no way I would regret that for the rest of my life. And so I thought, right, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to cycle around the world and I'm going to commit to it this time. I'm not going to stop until I finish. And a lot of the times what would happen is I'd go away and, I'd be a few weeks into it and I'd have an idea for something. I'd come home, want to do that. But I thought this time what I'm going to do is, it doesn't matter if on the first day you have the world's greatest idea. You cycle around the world, then you come home and do that idea. And that, honestly, it was so life-changing, because all those times I've been on the bike and, doubting it, thinking, should I do it, should I not, going into a wind one day, or it's wet and it's cold, or something goes wrong, you just want to come home. All those times that happened last year, coming home wasn't an option.
No.
Like I just took it off the table. And so basically what happened is I set off from my front door on April the 14th last year, and I never really looked back.
No.
I had a vision, I had a goal, cycle around the world, 18,000 miles, do not stop until you finish. And that was what happened. And 6 days into that journey, I was in London and my bike got stolen.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
That's the sort of thing that, like, 2 years ago I'd have thought, all right, I've not got a bike, time to go home. But that wasn't an option. I thought, I need to get another bike.
Yeah.
And it was another big story. It went viral online. I was on BBC and ITV, and there was loads of media coverage in London. And it ended up, all these people got in touch with me and started giving me money to get a new bike. We raised about like £2,500, and I got this absolutely beautiful, brilliant bike. When I went into the bike shop, I was like, what's the best bike to cycle around the world? And the guy said, it's this bike called Genesis. And I was like, right, that is the bike for me. And it was so I ended up with this absolutely perfect brand new bike that was just the absolute best bike for the job. And there I was in London. I thought, well, this is really it. Like there's no going back now. I've got this amazing bike. I've got all these people that have believed in me and put money into this. Like I can't pull out this time. It was done. I'd made the commitment. And after I got that new bike, from leaving London, it was so almost superhuman what I'd done last year. It was just, I think I was just so determined and so focused. And, I didn't spend any time doubting it. It was just forward. Yeah. I think I got to Istanbul in Turkey, which is the end of Europe, on day 53. And so 11 of those days were in London. So it was less than about 40 days that took me to cycle to Istanbul, like 3,200 miles. And then from Istanbul, that basically me finished the European leg. So I went Scotland, England, France, across the Alps into Switzerland, Italy, into Slovenia, Croatia, down through the Balkans, through like Bosnia, Montenegro, Albania, Greece, then Turkey. And then, so that was leg one. And then the second leg was the Asia leg, which was from Istanbul to Tokyo. I actually get goosebumps when I say that. It just sounds so amazing. Like Istanbul to Tokyo, it's just such exotic places which are so far apart.
Yeah.
And to think that I'd done that on a bike as well is just so amazing. And so I basically went across Turkey, Georgia, Azerbaijan, then got a boat across the Caspian Sea to Kazakhstan. And then I love saying that bit as well, a boat across the Caspian Sea. That sounds like the most adventurous thing ever. I went into Kazakhstan and then went through Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, then crossed the border into China, then went across China, then got a boat to South Korea, across South Korea, boat to Japan. And so I basically went from my front door in Scotland all the way to Tokyo without ever being on an airplane.
Yeah.
Which was incredible. And that was, so I set off in April and I arrived in Tokyo, I think it was the end of September. So that, it wasn't that long. It was quite fast. And by that time, I was doing about 150, 200 miles per day. And I was, in the beginning, I was only doing like 50. And I think what happened is that because I wasn't doubting it and because I wasn't stopping and starting all the time, I was just consistently cycling. And so I was just consistently getting fitter and fitter and fitter and fitter. And so I went from being this guy who was kind of like cycling on a bike around Europe, kind of a bit lost, wondering what he's doing with his life, to being this like superhuman athlete who's actually bombing across China and Asia on this bike, doing like 200 miles per day. And it was just so amazing for me because like very quickly into that journey, I was like, I was born to do this. Like this is why I stopped so many times because, and the best way to describe what I'm describing here, there's a quote, and it always meant something to me, this quote, but I never fully understood it till last year. Now, I said to you earlier that, I was stopping because of fear. And, what's interesting about that is that there was never any fear of cycling around the world. Like, I was never scared of being in China on my own, or never scared of crossing Kazakhstan. It was never a fear of, like, the actual practicalities of cycling around the world. And the quote to describe what I was scared of is, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate, it is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. And it's almost like that I was scared of becoming who I was meant to be. Yeah. And I was scared of how powerful and strong I might become. Yeah. And if you think about that guy on the bike, depressed, 50 miles a day, 10 mile an hour average, to go into being the guy who's doing 200 miles a day, like that's powerful. Yeah. And there's a lot of power in that. And I feel like you think about that journey 5 years ago today, starting in that hospital chapel, I made a vow that I was going to turn my life around and, give my life to God essentially. And I was going to find out why I was here. And if I sit here 5 years later, I know why. Yeah. Like I know why I'm here. I was born to ride the bike. And that's it. And so it was just such an incredible journey. And, getting to Tokyo was such a big part for me as well, because I'd never been out of Europe. Like I'd always just been in Europe, all those earlier attempts. And I think when I got to Tokyo, it was like, shit, like I'm actually, like, I knew I was going to do it that time. Like the minute I set off Edinburgh on the 7th attempt last year, I just knew deep down, like, this is it. There's no going back. But knowing you're going to do it and actually doing it are two different things. To be cycling down the street in Tokyo, being like, wow, like I've cycled to Tokyo, like how cool is that? Like it was just so amazing.
Did you have any issues with communicating, or like did people, were they always helpful? Which I think they were, weren't they?
Yeah. So as a general rule, I've never. It's weird for me to say this given what happened in America, right? But and I'm sure we'll get to that. But I've never really been in danger when I've been away, and I've never been scared, or nothing's ever really went wrong. Like for example, I've never like had somebody like come up to you in the street and threaten me or try to attack me or try to steal things from me. I've never had anything like that. Never. Just the complete opposite. Like when I was going through Asia, it was so interesting because a lot of the countries that people told me not to go to ended up being the friendliest. Yeah. And one of the biggest was Albania. Yeah. Albania is probably the place that people most told me not to go to. And I was probably a little, not apprehensive, but in the back of my mind thinking I need to be a little bit cautious here, just because there's so many people that said it to me. But the people in Albania were, and anywhere I've been in Europe, were genuinely like the friendliest and the most enthusiastic. Like the amount of people in Albania who were like beeping their horn at me and waving out the window, it was overwhelming because it was so positive. Yeah. And it was just like, I think that because there's not many not that many people go there,
that they're so
because it's got a reputation, that when people actually go there, they actually appreciate it.
yeah.
And I definitely found that. And when I was in Asia as well, especially Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, there was some really, really nice people there. And you know, the communication wasn't that there was no communication basically. And it was very, very much hands and, you know, signals and all that. But there was one word that I'll always remember from yeah, I'm going to forget it right now. If I heard it, I would know it. It's from Uzbekistan. I think it was something like Akuda or Aktuda. It basically means like, where are you from? Because that's people used to shout that at me like on a daily basis. Like they would just roll down their window and shout that because they were so like I never really seen anybody else there who was cycling. I met a few people like when I was almost in Kazakhstan. We got the boat with them, but when I was actually in like central Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, and I never seen any other cyclists or anything like that. So you know, when they see a guy like me, it looks like me, like a white guy, I can tell him from the West, riding a bike with all this luggage and stuff, they're just curious. And so the amount I've actually had more cups of tea in Asia than I've had in my entire life because I don't drink tea. I don't drink coffee or tea. But when you're there and people offer you tea, you take it because it's more it's a gesture rather than actually, you know, I enjoy tasting this. But so I had more cups of tea in Asia in like 30 days than I've had in my entire life. And so, you know, people were so amazing. The amount of people that, you know, let me like stay in their houses. And, you know, I done a lot of couch surfing in Europe, which was like official couch surfing, like actually messaging people and saying, can I stay? And they're like, sure. And then that's fantastic. But I done a lot of informal couch surfing, just like, you know, just cycling through a town and people just say, come and stay with me. And, you know, so many, like I spent a night with a family in Kazakhstan one night. And it was just so amazing because, you know, they didn't speak any English. Like I didn't speak any of their language, none. So but we managed to have a good night. It's weird how you can do that. And just a lot of it's just showing them photos and showing places that I've been and, you know, they're pointing at things. It's just a lot of fun. And so I had quite a good time there, but it was difficult because I was really isolated. And I think once I left those countries and went into China, I was in China for about 30 days. And China was really hard because although there was not that much communication in the Central Asian countries, in China there was literally like nothing, like not a thing. Like it was just so non-existent. Like just trying to communicate was just so difficult. And so for like the entire 30 days in China, I seen one guy from England at a service stop for like 10 minutes one night when I was there. It was the first night I arrived actually, but aside from that, my entire 30 days in China, I never seen one person who wasn't Chinese or who spoke English like properly. So it was like an entire month of just complete isolation, and it was really hard as well. You know, there was really strong winds. It was like 40 degrees every day. It was just such a brutal month, and I really struggled with that part of it. And I think once I got to like Korea and Japan, and then when I went down to Australia, like arriving in Australia was such a special moment for me because I'd always wanted to go to Australia. It's such a dream destination for me. A funny story as well also, and I'm sure you'll appreciate this, is that I also a couple of years ago met a girl in Edinburgh from Australia.
Yeah.
And I fell madly in love with her. We spent like 5 days in Edinburgh during the festival. Then we went to Dublin together, spent like 5 days there, and we had this really it should have been in a movie, this moment at the Dublin airport, where we were both like in tears and she was going to the other side of the world. And I remember saying to her that this was at a period in my life when I was off the bike, but I always knew at some point I would get back on it. And I remember saying to her, I'm going to cycle to your house one day. And she never believed me, obviously. Like why would you believe that?
Yeah.
And then I literally did cycle to her house. I never just turned up. Like once I arrived in Australia, we'd kind of been kept in touch a little bit across Asia. When I told her that I was coming, and I think as I arrived in like Kazakhstan, China, Tokyo, I think she was like, shit, he's actually coming now. And then I flew down to Perth, which is on the west coast of Australia, and she was in Adelaide, which is in the south. And so I basically had about 1,700 miles to get across from Perth to Adelaide. And that's going across the Nullarbor, which is a really famous stretchy road in Australia. There's almost like nothing there for some of it. It's just like total like desert. But it's really beautiful as well to see it. Sorry?
I'm actually from Perth, so...
Oh, are you?
Yes.
I love Perth. That was one of the best places that I went, because when I was in Perth, what was interesting was, because I'd had so much time in China alone, literally when I arrived in Perth airport, and I built my bike up and I cycled from the airport into the city centre.
Yeah.
and I literally had more conversations in the first hour than I'd had in the entirety of China.
Yeah.
Because I met like a cycling club, and there was like 20 of them, and
Yeah.
and then they took me for a coffee, and so I would just arriving in Australia, I was
Like-
so happy because there was so much social interaction, and I ended up spending about a week in Perth before I started, and I really needed that, just emotionally, just mentally, just to be around people again, and I stayed with about 4 or 5 different families in Perth. Interestingly, they were all Scottish.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Scottish people, and they were people who'd been following what I was doing, had family who knew me, etc. And so I went and stayed with like 4 or 5 different families in Perth, and that was just an amazing experience as well, just to be around people again. And then
Well, just
after spending about
there's Scotland anyway, doesn't it?
it was funny. One of the streets that I was staying in actually with a Scottish couple. It was a woman who actually a family who I know who moved out there a few years ago, and that was like the first person that I'd met, that I knew in like so long. And I remember being in their street, and we were out the front one day, and like the neighbours at both sides were both Scottish as well.
Yeah.
And it was such a weird experience because it was almost like being just back in Scotland, but like a hot Scotland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, Perth was amazing. Really enjoyed it there, and then obviously went across the Nullarbor. That took me about 12 days, which was about 1,700 miles. I was doing about 150 miles a day by that point.
Yeah.
And that was a special experience as well. Like I was totally cut off for the world. Like there was no phone signal or anything like that. So I wasn't even at times doing the social media stuff, and I wasn't. One of the things that I'd done as well is I decided I wasn't going to like read any of the comments or any of the messages for that 12 days. So for the entire 12 days from Perth to Adelaide, it was just me in Australia. It was me in the road. And I remember when I got to Adelaide, like I was so done. Like I was so dirty, and I was just done. But I remember feeling like that was special. Like that was truly special. Like I feel like when you go offline, you kind of disconnect from the world, and you're in such a place that's such a connection to the land. Yeah. It was just so special. And a lot of the roadhouses in Australia as well, I met some really cool people in there, like people who were traveling, and yeah, Australia was just so special for me. I just had such a connection with the Australian people, and they were just so much fun, and I just had such a good time there. And yeah, then I got to Adelaide. I went to stay with a girl for a week, and that was just so amazing to literally ride up to like her house, and after like going right across the world pretty much to get there. It was like, I'm not sure there's many guys done that for her before. So I had a lot of credit with her at least, and we had a great week. But after saying goodbye to her, I really struggled again. I kind of fell into a bit of depression, and I ended up spending like a week in Melbourne, where I was just so devastated and heartbroken because of what had happened, and I had an issue with my passport as well.
I know.
And I had to actually come home.
That was the first hurdle, which was crazy, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I basically, I don't know how I done this because there was not one drop of rainfall when I was in Australia, but I somehow water damaged my passport. I think what had happened is when I was crossing, there's a border between Western Australia and South Australia, and it's really because it's, as you'll know, there's a big issue with like fruit. I think it is. We're taking fruit between the states. Yeah, the fruit flies or something like that. So they want to check you're not taking fruit or things like that. And I think I took my passport out of my bag and put it in my back pocket. And I think I was just sweating so much because of the heat that I damaged the passport. And so I had to get an emergency passport in Melbourne. But that actually ruined my plans for America because you're not allowed to get into America on an emergency passport. And so I basically went across half of Australia. All I had to do was do the second half of Australia, Adelaide to Brisbane, and then go across America, and I was done. Like that was it. After all those years, it was done. But I had a big problem with where I was going to go next, and I thought about going to Canada. And I thought I'll just go to Canada instead. You need to remember this is November, right? So we're late November, and it's crazy how close I was to going to Canada. I literally had a flight booked from Brisbane to Vancouver, and then I realised because I have a Canadian friend who I met in Istanbul when I was there on the cycle, and I remember texting her saying, like what's the situation with Canada? Like, can I go across Canada in November and December? And she was like, no. You are nuts. Like there is no way. No. And I remember just thinking that there's no way I can go across Canada. But I was determined I was going to do it because I thought I need to find a way. And then I realised that I'm going to have to find a way of fixing this. And so basically what happened is that I'd kind of resigned the fact that, there's no way for me to do this. I wasn't sure how I was going to do it because they said that I was going to need to wait 6 weeks to get a new passport in Australia, and I was like, I don't know. And I'd already had all these big plans for 2020. Like I was going to start racing, and that was so important. I thought, do you know what? This was a big mistake that I made, right? But I quickly resolved it. I thought, do you know what? I've done the job. I've done the cycle essentially. I've not finished it, but I know why I've done it, and I can now focus on the future, which is all about the racing and the bike. And I thought I'll just go home, and then I'll get home for December, have Christmas, and then I'll be able to start racing in 2020. I'd also at this point forgetting that I've got this commitment to the goal and the cycle around the world, and it wasn't an option. And I decided that's what I was going to do, and I thought I'll just have to sacrifice the challenge. And then I got a phone call from the BBC when I'm in Australia, right? Because they'd been following it. They'd been quite good to me.
Yeah.
They'd covered so much of it. And I got to know the journalist quite well. And I remember being in Brisbane, and she says to me, Josh, we're just running a story on you. We just want to just run it by you before we put it out. And the headline was basically, round the world cyclist forced to abandon 6th attempt. And just see, as soon as she said those words to me on the phone, it was literally like split decision. I didn't even have time to think about it. I just went, no, sorry, I'm actually finishing it. And she went, oh, really? Wow. She went, that's amazing. And I basically, I made her rewrite the whole story, which was, at that time, I didn't know how I was going to finish it, right? Because I'm in Australia, I've not got a passport. And I thought, I'm going to have to find a way. And so I said to her, no, I'm finishing it. I'm going to come home and get a new passport and then go back to finish Australia and then do America. And it was that moment that it was just, I realised that can't be the end of this story. Like, the end of this journey is so Hollywood. Like, it's so cinematic. It doesn't end with me going home because of a passport. Like, there's no way. And so I flew home to Scotland. I got a new passport.
Well, remember you missed a plane, or the plane didn't go or something? So you missed.
Oh, my flight got cancelled. There were so many things went wrong.
We'd all every day, and we're like, seriously, mate, come on.
I know.
You're like, the way we've actually said it once was, those little inflatable clowns you get with the sand in the bottom that you can punch them, they fall over and just bounce back up again.
Yeah.
We're like, seriously, man, this guy's inflatable. It was like every time, like, yes, cool, he's going, and then it's like, oh man, come on.
And then so I flew home, managed to get a passport like in 2 or 3 days, and then within a week I was back in Australia. I flew back to Adelaide, and then I cycled from Adelaide to Brisbane. It was about 1,800 miles. Done that in about 12 days. It was really fast as well. And so I managed to, I never done it in one go, but I managed to cycle from Perth all the way to Brisbane. It was about 3,500 miles or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then I flew from Brisbane to Los Angeles. And there I was on, this was like the home straight. Like, all these years, all these attempts, the only thing in between me and finishing cycling around the world was getting across America. And I remember as I was coming into Los Angeles, it was just, I always, this story, as I said, it's so Hollywood, right? There's definitely a book and a movie in here. I know that for a fact.
Yeah.
I remember as I was coming into Los Angeles, and I could see the Hollywood sign, and it was just such a beautiful, I was like, this is it. Like, this is it. Like, this is my Hollywood moment.
Yeah.
I've just got like a couple of weeks to get across America, and that's it. And so I arrived in Los Angeles, I get the bike all packed up, and then I've basically got like 3,500 miles from Los Angeles to New York, and we're all but done. And so it's December now, it's really cold, it's really dark, I'm doing really big days. I was trying to do like 250 miles a day because we were now like, I think I arrived in Los Angeles about the 10th of December. So I was determined to get home for Christmas. I thought, how cool would that be? Started in April, cycle around the world in 8 months, home for Christmas, like, job done, enjoy Christmas, and then 2020, let's crack on and start racing.
Yeah.
And so I started off, quite well. I was doing maybe about 150, 200 miles per day. Some of the days were really crazy. Like, I done one day that was 270 miles. Then another day it was 240 miles. Like, I was really going for it because I was so close. But then by the time I got to, like, just as I was crossing into, so I went from Los Angeles, I think it was into Phoenix, Arizona, places like that, and then I crossed into Texas, and just as I crossed into the border with Texas, it's obviously such a big state. It was starting to get really extreme, the conditions, because of the time of the year. So it was like -10 in the mornings when I was waking up, and it was pitch black. So I was cycling for like 5 hours in the dark in the morning, then 5 hours in dark at the night. It was just really difficult. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to just reroute, because this original route that I'm on, it's only going to get colder. Like, I'm going further north, going up to the east coast of America in December. It's not pretty.
No.
And I thought, I'm just going to start heading south. I'll get to the south coast. I'll go along the southern states, and I'll finish on the coast in Florida. I've still went across America, which was the goal. I just, finishing New York was always a dream, obviously, because it's just such an iconic city. So I was in Texas, and, you know, I had about 5 days to go. I was doing about 200 miles per day by that point. I had 1,000 miles to go to Florida, and I changed my route. So I wasn't going the right way anymore. I started going south. And then 21st of December, I wake up, I'm in a motel somewhere in a place called Abilene in Texas. And I set off for the day. And it's quite a hard day, but I was doing quite well. Done about 180 miles. It's about 10 p.m. and I stopped in a place called Gatesville at a Burger King, because, you know, when I'm on the road, convenience is so important. So I'm eating a lot of fast food and burning like 8,000 calories a day. So I'm not eating like nuts and bananas when I'm on the road, trying to be healthy. It's just about convenience and calories. So I stopped at a Burger King, and, you know, I'd done 180 miles, which was quite good. But the place I was trying to stay, that night, was called Temple, and it was about an extra 20 miles. And I thought, it's about 10:30 at night. It's really dark. It's late. I'm on this big highway road. I thought, just stay here, Josh. You've done 180. That's fine. But I thought, no, I want to get to 200. You wanted to get to that place. Just go for it. And I thought, right, 20 more miles. That's it. An hour and a half. We'll get it done. So I got back on the bike. And it's so interesting with this. And see if anybody wants to go into my Strava and go into the file from that night, you can actually see this happening. I leave the Burger King and I start going in this direction. And then I realize that I'm going the wrong way. And so I turn back on myself. And so I turn back, and I finally got to the highway that I'm trying to get on, which is Highway 36. I get on the Highway 36. I'm riding on it. I can't really remember what I was thinking about, because it was late and it was dark. There is an issue on the highway, but because there's usually a hard shoulder, which I'm in on the highway, but there was roadworks going on. So I was like on the main road, which is allowed in America. The bikes are allowed on that road, but it's obviously not ideal. And in hindsight, I probably would have not rid that road that late at night. And so basically the last thing I can remember is being on that road, riding and just trying to get to Temple. And the next thing I can remember is just lying on the ground and just being like face down. I wasn't in any pain, but I knew something was wrong. Like, this wasn't right. And I remember there was somebody beside me trying to talk to me. And I just knew, like, shit, something's went wrong. But I wasn't in any pain, so it was weird. And then I can remember a helicopter arriving, because it's hard not to notice a helicopter because it's so loud. And I kind of realised I was in a helicopter. I remember it was an ambulance and I was on a stretcher. I remember being like, shit, I've been hit. Like, something's went wrong. But I still didn't really know what. And then I got flew in a helicopter to the hospital. And if you go into my Strava as well and look at the file from that day, you can actually see like my route following the road, and it just goes in a straight line, which is basically the helicopter has gone direct to the hospital. And I remember being in the emergency room, and I was lying on a stretcher, and I was lying straight in my back, so because I had so many injuries, which I'll tell you about in a minute. And I was asking them to lift me up so I could see where I was and what was going on. They said, you know, you need to lie down because your back's really injured. And I remember just being like, shit, I've been hit by a car. Like, this is crazy. Like, this is, and basically, you know, I got taken into intensive care. And, you know, those first like 36, 48 hours are a bit of a blur. Like, there's so much happening and there's so much adrenaline. But I can't really remember being in that much pain in the beginning. And then I sort of remember being a little bit conscious, and they basically explained to me that I'd been hit by a car. And I was like, I just tried to take it all in. I was like, wow, that's crazy. And basically, the car had been traveling behind me and hit me from behind at 70 miles an hour. And so that's just nuts. And I flew 50 feet through the air, hit the ground, and, you know, that's what happened. So basically the injuries that I had was I had a fractured skull and a traumatic brain injury. I damaged one of the arteries in my neck. I had 7 broken ribs. One of those ribs went right into my lung, so I had a hole in my lung, which is called a pneumothorax. I'd fractured one of the bones in the bottom of my back, and I'd also had a fractured shin, a fractured ankle, and a fractured heel bone. And I required 2 major surgeries, one for the artery in my neck. I needed a surgery for that, which I need to take medication now for every day for the rest of my life for that, which is interesting. And also, my left ankle was so badly messed up, I needed a major surgery in my ankle. So that was basically what happened. And that's 2 70-mile-an-hour car crashes I've now survived. It's pretty. 70 is becoming like a lucky number for me. And I'm not fancying my chances with a third one, but
No, please.
it's just, it is what it is. And I ended up spending 2 weeks or 3 weeks, sorry, in hospital in America.
Yeah.
And I wasn't allowed to fly home because of the lung, because you can't go in the sky like that. And after 3 weeks, I was cleared for release from the hospital, but I had nowhere to go because I wasn't allowed to fly, and I still needed a little bit of medical care, but I was too well for hospital. So I basically went to a rehab center in Austin, Texas for 2 weeks. So I spent like 5 weeks in Texas in hospital and rehab. And it's going to sound mental saying this, but I had so much fun. Like, I had so much fun in Texas. Like, in the first maybe week or two, there were some really painful injuries. Like my ribs especially was just so painful. Like, just to have broken ribs and having 7 of them was really tough. But for the most part, if you think about that life I had last year, I was on the road on my own for 8 months. A lot of those times in places where I couldn't communicate with people. And when I was in Texas, right, you would not believe the amount of people that came and visited me. Like, the amount of I was honestly like a celeb. I was a celebrity in that hospital because I was Scottish. I was from the UK, and everybody knew that I had no family and friends there really. There was only one person who I knew who I'd met actually when I was traveling before, and they just came and surprised me, which was really nice. But aside from that, I didn't know anybody in Texas. So the story got picked up by the media there. I was doing like TV interviews and stuff with people in Texas. And so all these, somebody posted it in like cycling groups and stuff like that on Facebook. And so I had all these visitors, and so it was so busy. And so I had this life where I was so lonely and isolated for so much of the year. And then I'm in this hospital with all these nurses and all these doctors and all these visitors and just so many people. And it was just, to be honest, it was just, I actually enjoyed it, and I had fun. It was, the challenge had become so intense by the end. And it was nice to have a break. As weird as that sounds, like I was enjoying, not having to do anything every day. And, all the social interaction, all the people that were visiting me, it was a lot of British people who'd moved to America as well. So it was a little taste of home. And, I can honestly say that I met so many friends for life in Texas, and I had overall, I would say it was a positive experience. I'm glad it happened.
And you bounced back so quickly, because when I saw that picture of you, obviously we all thought, oh my God, you were able to walk again so fast after. It was crazy how quick you recovered from everything.
Because that first picture in hospital, it was pretty bad. And I actually remember hesitating to post that because I thought that does look so bad. But I thought I need to post it. And then there's one photo that I done where it's like 7 days after the crash.
Yeah.
And like the difference is incredible. Like how fast my face healed. And so I was basically, after about I moved to rehab after 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And when I was in rehab, I was on the bike in the gym.
Yeah.
Like I was wheeling down to the gym in my wheelchair. my legs in a cast. I'm not allowed to walk because I was non-weight bearing. And I was sitting in the wheelchair, pedaling the stationary bike. And I was going down and doing like 3 and 4 hours a day.
No way.
And all the physiotherapists and all the staff in the gym over there, they thought I was crazy. They were like, this guy is just nuts. Like I was literally so messed up, and I was going down to the gym for like 4 hours a day.
Yeah.
I definitely set records on that bike in that gym because nobody cycled as many miles as I did in that gym. Yeah. And so basically I healed so fast, and then I got back to Scotland after 5 weeks. And so the crash was 21st of December. And I think I was back on the bike. It was like the first week of February.
Yeah.
I was back on the bike indoors in this conservatory where I am now, just cycling in an indoor trainer. And then I think it was after 6 weeks, I was cleared to start walking again. And then I was back out on the bike. I think 7 weeks after the crash, I was back out on the roads. And from the start of March, April, May, I've just finished 12 weeks of training. All my injuries are fully healed. I'm actually never been as fit as I am now. I'm actually been putting in like record numbers on the bike. Like I'm further ahead than I was when I got hit. Yeah. Like in terms of my fitness and my power, all my numbers. So I made an absolute miraculous recovery. And a big part of it, and this is an important lesson, is that one of the doctors in America said to me that one of the reasons why you're alive is because you were so fit.
Yeah.
Like you said, my lung was supposed to take like 6 weeks to heal, and it healed after 3 weeks. And that's just because it's so fit and in shape. And all my other injuries as well just healed so fast. And So the fitness and the strength was one side of it, but also I think my mindset as well. Like the whole time I was there, and you'll notice if you watched any of it when I was in there, like I was doing videos every day, and I was the whole time I was there. There was never one time I was feeling sorry for myself, or there was never one time I thought I'm not going to get back on the bike. Like from the minute I knew I was conscious and I got hit, my only thought was I'm getting back on the bike no matter what. And it was such a commitment to the challenge, and I just wanted to get back at it. And so the thing that got me through it was just that driving force and that commitment just to get back at it. And it doesn't matter if I get hit 100 times, as long as I fully recover, I'll always get back in the bike, because I just love it. It's just my passion in life, and no amount of car crashes or obstacles or passports or illnesses or nothing's going to stop me. Nothing's going to stop me doing what I love. And so here we are. We're now at the end of May, 5 years from the crash, first crash. 3 or 4 months from the second crash, and I'm fitter than ever. I'm happier than ever. I'm determined, and I'm ready to go. And obviously, right now the world is going through a crazy thing with the coronavirus, and nobody could have imagined this, this time last year. But I was on track. If coronavirus never happened, cycling in the world would have been finished at the end of April. I was on track. I was on track to go back to America in the start of April. That would have been 3 months after the accident, and so, I'm fit, I'm ready, I'm waiting to go, and when the time is ready, I'll be there, and I'll go and finish cycling around the world.
Yeah. Would you this time go back to try New York again, or would you do the southern route?
Well, this is so exciting, right? Because so obviously I'm going to go back to Texas, because I need to go back to Texas, and I'm going to honor the original route from Texas to New York.
Yeah.
Do you know there's actually part of me just considers starting again and doing the whole thing again, but I'm being serious. I'm being so serious. I've genuinely considered that, but I think I need to focus on the racing and going forward, so I'll probably not do that, and I'll just go and finish what I need to finish. But I did consider that. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to fly back to Texas, and one of the officers out there, I think his name is Samuel, Officer Samuel, who was handling my case, he was really good to me, and he helped me out a lot when I was over there. He said that when I go back, what he's going to organise for me is like almost like a motor guard. Like you know that way, like the president, he's got all the cars around them.
Yeah.
They're going to go back onto Highway 36 where I got hit, to ride from Gatesville to Temple, because that's the bit that I need to finish.
Yeah.
And they're going to get loads of police cars to like drive beside me and just make sure that I don't get hit. So it's going to be so much fun. And I'm also, one of the things that I'm going to do as well, because there were so many cyclists from Texas who came and visited me, and just who got in touch, I want to organise like a big group cycle when I go back. So what we're going to do is, when I go back, it's about 70 miles between the rehab centre and the hospital. So one was in Temple, one was in Austin. Austin's like a really big city in Texas, I'm sure you probably know.
Yeah.
And so what we're going to do is going to organise a group cycle from the hospital in Temple to the rehab centre in Austin. Like, we're going to try and get loads of us to do it, loads of cyclists, and hopefully if I've got all those cyclists around me, I'll be safe this time, and nobody will hit me. But you know what, I'm looking forward to it. Texas has genuinely got a special place in my heart now. I always have just such an amazing place, such amazing people, and I'm so excited to get back there.
Visit you, didn't he?
Sorry?
The helicopter pilot came to visit you.
Yeah, the guy who flew the helicopter, he came and visited me as well. That was so amazing.
I know. Well, whew. So
there we go.
yes. It's kind of hard to count the hurdles you had, COVID being the last one now. But yeah, like you said, when I saw the second time you got hit, they looked pretty much the same as your first injury pictures, didn't they? But this time around, you recovered so quickly. And I remember writing you, and then I realized everyone else wrote you, so everyone was supportive. But you said, the next day you came out, and I could see he doesn't need our help. He doesn't need anything. He's fine. And then you posted of all these people who came to visit you, and that again showed everyone they look after you. You're looked after, but you didn't need looking after anymore. So this was, that was just such a lovely thing to see. So I always think the only thing I could say to the whole journey you've done, do you wish you've done it slower? Would you ever want to because there's no time in communicating with anyone if you're whizzing past, or did you feel like you soaked it all in?
No, I made a choice last year. The choice that I've made now is that I'm cycling for performance, and I want to win. I want to be a champion. I've got big goals and aspirations, and that's the decision I've made. When I'm old and grey, like when I'm when I'm in my, anywhere from 50 to 80, right? I can always go back and cycle around the world and do it slow. But
Yeah.
this is like the peak in my life. This is the thing that I want to do. And so, by going fast, you definitely sacrifice a lot of that. But it's a choice that I made, and
Yeah.
I'm happier going fast because I get more from going fast and the speed than I do from stopping, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's just, there's different ways to do it. I've met a lot of cyclists last year, people who are on the road and doing different things, and 99% of people you meet are doing it slow. And that's, if anybody wanted to go and cycle around the world, which I would highly recommend, it's definitely not for everybody. But if anybody wanted to do it and they felt that they were capable of it and it was something they've always wanted to do or experience, I would not recommend doing it the way I do it, 100%. Because no, not I wouldn't, because for most people don't want to do it the way I do it. Most people want to do it as I've got two friends who I met last year from England. We've got the boat together across the Caspian Sea, and I spent a couple of days with them because we were on the same boat. And then when we got to Kazakhstan, I went ahead on my own. And they were having a great time. It's like a holiday experience. It's a lifetime for them.
Yeah.
But for me, it's not about that. I don't want a holiday. I don't want a. I like going fast. I like performance. I've got that bit that will never leave me. That drive, that ambition, that entrepreneurial spark will never leave me. And so when I'm out there, I want to do stuff. I want to create. I want to perform. I don't want to just go and sit about. Do you know what I mean?
No, that's cool. That totally makes sense. And you still soaked it all in, didn't you? And you still have had interactions with people. So I do think it's. But also, like you said earlier, you were definitely not a cyclist when you started this, and now you are. I do remember you telling me the first time. Can you believe it? I bought a bike. I'm gonna cycle. And nowadays, if one looks at you now, everyone would think you've done this for years, like this is your life. But it is now. It hadn't been then. So even if people feel unfit, they can still do it because you showed them how to.
Yeah, totally. I think I think I'm scared to say anybody can do it because I think that I'm not sure that's the right message because it does take I think there has to be an element of craziness or risk about it. There's certain people who just really they hate risk, and it is a risky thing. But if there's people who genuinely would want to do it, 100%. It's just it doesn't matter. Like I used to literally cycle 50 miles. I know that still is quite a lot, but when I was cycling those 50 miles a day, I can't even stress how slow I was going and how hard it was and how unfit I was. And I got fit so fast. It only took me a couple of weeks to get up to speed.
Yeah.
And I think that the key thing for me is consistency.
Yeah.
If you do something enough times consistently, you'll get good at it. Yeah. Everybody can get to a good level. Not everybody's going to go on and become a champion and win the Tour de France, and that's fine because not everybody wants that. Yeah. But you can get to a level where you're fit and you can go out and ride your bike and enjoy it and feel fit, 100%.
And and I wasn't saying everyone needs to go around the world. I think it's more about being active, being, like some people like running, others like cycling, others like swimming. But there's so many of us who think, oh, what's the point? I'm never going to get there. And, yes, like I said, we will probably be speaking in 10 years' time and there will be another thing you've been doing. And you always go to the extreme because that's you. And you just always have this following because it's just so amazing to watch you doing stuff, So that, I don't think anyone is ever going to be like you. You're special with that. But like you showed how if you put your mind to things, you can get there. That's what I always admire.
Yeah, it's self-awareness. It's just knowing who you are. Like for example, I'm such an extreme individual, and what I like doing is I like making big black or white decisions and just committing to it. Like I don't. That's why I don't drink anymore. That's why I don't eat chocolate. That's why I don't eat takeaways because I can't. I had to accept that I can't do balance.
Yeah.
And I'm happy with that. Like I don't want to have one bar of if I'm going to eat chocolate, right?
Yeah.
I want to eat like a square this size, right? That's the truth. And if I'm going to drink and go to the pub, I want to do it 4 nights a week. I could not go to the pub and do 2 beers. I just couldn't do it. I've no interest in it, and I've just no desire. Anything I do, I want to do to the full. Like it's what happened with cycling. Like, see the position I was in 5 or 4 years ago. A lot of people in that position would have maybe thought, right, maybe I'll cycle Lanzarote to John O'Groats.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'll just get into cycling. But for me, I thought I'm going to cycle around the world. It's just how I think. It's how I think. It's how I see the world. I need to do it that way, and it works for me.
Yeah.
That's what works for me. You just need to know yourself, and I almost in a weird way get balance from my, because I pull from such extremes. I
Yeah.
kind of get a bit of balance in the middle,
Yeah.
and I just like that. I like the fact that I don't debate or doubt these things. I just don't drink, and that's it.
That's
Like I can go to pubs, I can go to weddings, I can go to parties, and it doesn't even enter my mind to have a drink because I'm just done with it.
Yeah.
And so that works for me. A lot of people don't need to do that. I don't need to be as extreme as that, but I just know who I am.
Yeah, which is perfect. You're good. Perfect. Thank you, Josh. We've literally taken double the time that we thought we'd use, but I knew we were, and it was honestly I could listen to you much longer. So let's finish this off. We'll speak to you in a second, and we'll just announce that we have who we have on next week. It's going to be Tuesday again next week. We've got Vineet Lal. He used to be a colleague of mine at Visit Scotland, but he's also been working for Visit England before. And we're going to focus on England next week and about literature and England, because literature is his second passion, shall we say. He'll take us through England and literature places. So that's going to be really good.
Cool. So we will see you then. We'll just see you out with another image before we go. See you next week.